I think we live in a time where, despite a lot of technological advances, to many something feels deeply broken. There's a global crisis in mental health, and yet in the past 20 years, Western medicine has had few real innovations. Some look back to a time where humanity was more connected to nature, to community, and to ritual. They seek out ancient Amazonian traditions like ayahuasca, renowned for its powerful visionary effects. Now, ayahuasca experiences can be pretty wild. It's a challenge to research them scientifically. I'll show you today how I'm researching ayahuasca experiences with interpretative phenomenological analysis. I hope to demonstrate something of what IPA may offer you as neuroscientists towards a new possibility of experiential neuroscience. I'm Adam Knowles. I'm a supervisee or apprentice, perhaps, of Jonathan Smith here at Birkbeck, one of the founders of Interpretative Phenomenological Analysis. I'm a psychotherapist and lecturer in psychotherapy and counselling, and I've drunk a lot of ayahuasca, perhaps 50 times. This research is in collaboration with the Institute of Psychiatry at King's College London on Neuroscience and the Ayahuasca Foundation. I'll say a bit more about them in a moment. Please feel free to raise your hand, ask any questions at any point. I'll probably keep my responses brief. This talk's going to be about half an hour, and we'll have some questions at the end. So, come with me on a journey to deepest, darkest Peru. Peru's about a 30-hour flight from London via Lima. You can see here, trying to show from the satellite view, how remote it is. So Iquitos is a city that you can only get to by plane or by boat. There are no roads. And then the Ayahuasca Foundation, which is here, so this is their main building, solar panels, you reach via a 3-hour boat from the center of the city of Iquitos. So there's me waving. And once you get there, there is no way out. So there's no electricity, there's no running water, you're on a strict diet. It's quite an intensive experience before you even start to drink ayahuasca. Behind this building is a round straw-covered hut in a traditional style called a maloca. Has a wooden floor here, and the Westerners, most of them Americans, most of my participants were American, some English, lie on mattresses in a circle. The facilitators and shaman are indigenous trained. So next to the Ayahuasca Foundation is a traditional Shipibo village from the Shana community. And the shaman shaman's a Western word, but the maestro, as he would call himself in Spanish, sits, serves up the ayahuasca, and then they facilitate the ceremony. So in our setup, we had 10 participants sat around the circle, and perhaps four facilitators. This is a cup of ayahuasca. And as I was saying at the start, this is the ayahuasca vine. So this is kind of inert in a sense, but were you to smash it up and ground it in a what's it called? Mortar and pestle? And break apart the fibers of the bark, you would get, well, pharmacologically, there's a monoamine oxidase inhibitor in this, which makes the DMT in the chacruna leaves, which I've not brought, but you bring with these. On this diagram, you can see the diagram. This is a traditional textile from the Shipibo village. The women folk mainly will make these elaborate embroidered visionary things, and around the outside, these are the leaves of the chacruna bush, and in the middle you have the pot of ayahuasca. So you mix together the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna leaves. The ayahuasca vine makes the DMT in the chacruna bioavailable, crosses the blood-brain barrier, as I understand it, not my area, and then you will start to have an ayahuasca journey, or you may start to have an ayahuasca journey. The ayahuasca is served in a cup like this, so I mean, this is a flat white, but 50 to 100 milliliters of liquid. You drink it ritually in small groups, under the supervision of the shaman, and the ceremony will last 4 to 6 hours in total darkness. one of my participants talks about the total darkness. No interaction between participants. Traditional singing would happen. There's lots of tobacco smoke. There's this, which I was also showing at the start. This is a highly perfumed alcohol, which the facilitators will take into their mouth and then spray over you in a mist, which is very it can start to steer the ayahuasca journey. It can either wake you up or snap you out of something, things like that. So I'm just trying to point out there are a variety of practices that they can use to help you in your ayahuasca journey. I'll just touch briefly on the experiential side. So I'm here to talk to you about the ayahuasca experience and my investigations of the ayahuasca experience. We'll come later to what that might look like neuroscientifically. Well, that's what IPA is. It's a structured, rigorous way of researching human experience and the meaning of those experiences. This is what happens when you drink wine. You start sober with a sense of self, a sense of world. I was talking to Denise about, phantom limbs and how fluid that can be. Actually, even in everyday settings, it can be relatively fluid. In ayahuasca, that's amplified. 30 to 60 minutes after drinking, you become inebriated. You're aware something is up. Pins and needles. Maybe vision starts to, I would say, melt a little bit. If you look at the carpet, it may start to swim a little bit, let's say. And 30 to 60 minutes after becoming inebriated, you may, not everybody does, and certainly not everybody does the first time, enter an ayahuasca journey, which is often, the themes are often, so my qualitative literature shows that subjectively the experiences of often of hell realms, demons, devils, fire, heaven, it's nice, bodily purging, lots of vomiting, lots of going to the toilet, and visuals. I mean, visuals are the hell and heaven, but by visuals I mean, well, I've done a little alien there, but it can be as simple as an overlaid matrix of exactly this sort of pattern, You may see, we call this sacred geometry. You may see it on the ceiling of a mosque, perhaps, or you see it in various places, but a very detailed matrix of things happening. So as I said, I hope this to be, today, a little bit psychedelic. I'll try to give you now, via the power of audiovisual effects, an experience of something like the heavenly. I've chosen the heavenly, it's going to be nice to you, of the ayahuasca experience. So I've just got a little video here, and I'll play the sound from my laptop and see what you, just allow yourself to watch this for a second and see what you think. So you can see here colours, general tones of rich blues, greens, purples. Experientially, I would say that I've seen colours on ayahuasca that I've never seen before in real life, with an intensity and a hue that beyond imagination, so we can't show that here. Shapes, intricate swirling patterns. Hopefully you can see a relationship between what's in the embroidery and the patterns here. Everything is as if it's inlaid by a master craftsperson with gold. Very lots of tiny details, and then it's constantly morphing. The visual is constantly morphing. Everything's morphing into everything else. This kind of tunnel experience is quite common. If you think about the titles of Doctor Who or something like that, this sense of moving from here through something to get to there is quite common. It's often called DMT hyperspace, the place that you can arrive at. I've experienced that as a grand cathedral. There's lots of eyes, there's lots of faces of are they humans, are they animals, is that an elephant's trunk, body parts, yeah, if I'm sat there in that maloka in the circle, is this my arm or has it become an elephant's trunk, am I becoming a snake? These are quite common experiences. So, ayahuasca is generally illegal, that's why I needed to go to Peru to research it ethically. Yes, of course.
Are the experiences only visual related, or can you hear sounds and having motion related experience? Do you have any floating?
Do I have any
floating? Floating.
I mean, it's a bit of everything. I really struggle to try and convey to you how comprehensive it is. We talk about ayahuasca visions, But by visions, we mean a whole body experience. It's completely holistic. So floating, moving without moving, becoming the woman across the room, and well beyond that, having interstellar journeys across time and space are all part of this. So this is a relatively all I can show today is a relatively mild version of the visual aspect. You'll see when my participants, I'll come to you in a sec, what my participants talk about. And I was saying to Jonathan yesterday, it's quite a struggle to get, there can be almost a naive sense of ayahuasca visions, but it's much more embodied. It's much more embodied than that. And people then try to use perhaps visual metaphors to convey to me as an interviewer what it is they're actually experiencing. But fundamentally, the experience is ineffable. So this is to my point. The experience, ayahuasca is illegal. The experience is ineffable, as in it's very difficult to capture or communicate. So how do we study it scientifically? How do we capture it, either neurologically or experientially? And that's where interpretive phenomenological analysis comes in. Yes, you had a question.
So you've done work with, whether they're stable across cultures.
Great question. So Professor David Luke at the University of Greenwich is investigating the similarity. So if you look up his work, he's done a lot on how cross-cultural and how thematic the concepts and visions that come up. So machine elves, for instance, are a common, aliens are a common thing. Do they come up? There's one story, I'll try and keep this brief and come back to this perhaps later, but there's one story of showing a Shipibo elder who had taken a lot of ayahuasca but never contacted Western civilization, never seen Netflix or anything like that, showed him a picture of a grey alien, a very typical movie, sort of very long, thin, with little arms and big eyes. And he said, yes, and they had a name for it. They knew exactly what that was. They said, yeah, we meet him all the time. Good friends with this alien, right? So I'll just put that to you as a little, David Luke's basic idea is that, and it's captured by a book called The Antipodes of the Mind, that although these are wild experiences, they're somehow familiar. And this is quite consistent, but they're somehow familiar. So the antipodes, as you go to Australia, the flora, the fauna are different, but it's still the same world. You can still function there somehow, and you recognise what's there, and it doesn't freak you out. I might say that we visit something like this in our dreams every night as well, of course. But, so yes, the answer is there are some cross-cultural elements that seem to be independent, and then there are others like religious iconography. Generally, Christian-informed people may see Christian symbology more than someone who's non-Christian as well. So let me talk to you about interpretive phenomenological analysis. This is a qualitative experiential research method. This is as I say, a structured way. It's the best way I've found to research experiences that are tricky to get hold of, like ayahuasca. And I'm here today to talk to you about how it may be able to serve in combination with what you're researching, how researching both the experience and the perhaps more quantitative aspects of experiences could work together. There are three principles. Hermeneutics is the practice of the evidenced interpretation of human expression. So hermeneutics it's interpretative, but it's not anything goes. It's, as Jonathan is often drilling me on where's the data, where's the evidence for whatever interpretation that I'm putting forward for something. I hope to demonstrate that in the participant data. So hermeneutics is a centuries old, comes from biblical study, Bible studies, of trying to understand what human expression is really trying to communicate, and that's obviously important if you're dealing with interview data or other written data, spoken data, whatever it is. Phenomenology is the close examination of first-hand experience through fresh, inquisitive eyes. So, examining body perceptions, experience of temporality, intersubjectivity or relationships. It's the direct experience of real people in the real world. So phenomenology is kind of setting aside everything you think you know, bracketing everything you think you know, and saying, but just based on, in a sense, my senses, what can I report? What can I tell you from first principles? Not from theory, not from ideas, not from concepts, not from abstractions, but from first principles, and let's root everything we know in that. So IPA tries to channel that. And then ideography. My idea of ideography is that it's a study of a person, an individual, a person with history and hopes, not a disconnected data point. We in IPA we study individuals, and we study rather than a sample size of 100. IPA will have a much smaller sample size, and you investigate each person as Jonathan calls it, a universe of exploration. That person is a hermeneutic unit, it's a meaning-making unit. And only after I've understood that will I take a step back from that and look at themes across different people. That translates to in-depth, time-consuming analysis of small samples, where the researcher generates themes of meanings from the data via a process of reviewing for each participant a transcript. So I did semi-structured interviews, 60 to 80 minutes, making detailed notes. We capture experiential statements from each of those transcripts, and then work those up into what we call personal experiential themes, or PETs. And I'll speak a bit about that in terms of the data I have. I interviewed 8, and then from personal experiential themes, there's another step beyond that to group experiential themes. So across my 8 participants, but what IPA is really good at, if it's done well, is maintaining a link all the way through to the phenomenological detail of, but I can see this is round and it has a shape, and I'm thinking this is the bottle, and then stepping straight back to what that means existentially for someone in their life. What difference it makes, in this case for ayahuasca experiences, what difference does that make to them? Mine is a longitudinal study, so I studied people across time, so I'm looking for change over time, so that's called a longitudinal IPA. IPA can be point in time, single point. Mine is across 3 time points, time point 1 before retreat, time point 2 on retreat, so I went to this, to the Ayahuasca Foundation, time point 3 6 months later. We may add another time point to this to look further. And because I was dwelling with these people, there was an ethnographic aspect. I was talking to Denise earlier. One of the advantages of spending so much time with these people is I wasn't just turning up with a clipboard and saying, tell me what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Tell me about your biggest ayahuasca experience. I'm living, breathing, sleeping, going through a lot with these people. It builds a relationship, and I think that shows itself in the data that I was then able to get.
Sorry, so these are people that do this experience often?
No, most of my participants were first-time drinkers, but some weren't. So maybe I'll say that about participants next. So yes, if you were thinking, when I was planning my study, I started to think about like variables, like first-time drinkers versus regular ones. But the problem with ayahuasca is that some people don't have any ayahuasca journey for the first 20 experiences. So in a sense, their first ayahuasca experience is on the 21st time of drinking it. So it's not straightforward to say, including my participants.
Something that you have to learn?
One of my draft themes is people learning what I call ceremony skills. So you have to, and I'm speaking personally, you have to learn to lean into the experience. A bit, I don't know if you've ever gone skiing or snowboarding, but I think you've got to lean down the mountain, right? You've got to lean down the mountain. And what people tend to do, because it's terrifying, I don't know how to express this to you, but it can be absolutely terrifying. And the hell bit, you can put a little word with a little emoji, but it can be absolutely schizophrenic, psychotic, like being torn apart and torn asunder into the corners of the universe, right? Dane, one of my participants, talks a bit about that. So yeah, you have to navigate that. You have to calm yourself. You have to use your breath, as I'm doing now with my nerves with the presentation. You use your tools. You use your breath. You use your agua florida. You use the tobacco. So they will give you the tobacco because tobacco is considered a master teacher. Tobacco is a master plant, as ayahuasca. Sometimes they're classed as male and female. Anyway, I'll stop there if that's okay. We can return. Okay, great, good, keep them going. Let's get into the data. So, Klara, in her 40s, she's a child therapist. I've labelled, so just think about this, this is what I call the hermeneutic circle. As I said before, we think about a person with a life, with a history. And I'm telling you this because it frames what she says, and that's how I'm thinking about the interpretation. I'll come back to that. T1, she says, I wanted more understanding of who I was and why. Alcoholics Anonymous didn't give me the answers. I decided to revisit ayahuasca. So she'd heard about ayahuasca 10 years ago, thought, oh, it's not for me. found a crisis in her life, returned to ayahuasca. On retreat, she says, so I've tried to pick a quote here that you might want to think about neurologically. I just lost all control of my body. My face was melting into the mattress. She said she couldn't, she had to feel where her mouth was. She had no idea. I started to sit myself up, ceremony skills. Okay, I can sit up. I have a head. She had to remind herself, I have a head. I know where I am. So she asserts herself. Her voice was like an angel. She's talking about this, the woman singing, one of the facilitators. It was like me. Then she starts to have a vision. It was like me, but notice the like. This isn't necessarily something she's seeing, but it's her interpretation of it. It was like me as a tiny girl, and I had to go towards it and just let my heart go. Whatever this was that I was clinging on to, just stop and let it out. And cried and cried and cried from my belly and rocked. And it felt really sad and like loss, but such a relief at the same time. So just trying to give you that's the acute ayahuasca. So this is actually the day after, so I'm not talking to people during ceremony. This is, but it could be sometimes just a few hours after the retreat, after the ceremony. 6 months later, I feel ready now to start concentrating properly on life, build my life back up properly here at home. So she goes to Peru to find something. She comes back home, and now she's ready. So we can say more about that. I captured that her overall journey longitudinally is shifting from alcohol to ayahuasca. So what I mean by that is she used to depend on alcohol to get her through, and now she depends on ayahuasca to get her through. Some might say that's just shifting an addiction from one thing to another. Is that good or bad? Well, she thinks it's good. Other people can have their own view. I'm gonna show 2 more participants. Jeanne, in her 60s, she's a pregnancy educator. Again, you'll see how that might relate to what she says. She identifies as a crone. I don't know if you're aware of the archetypes of maiden, mother, crone. So maiden, kind of virgin, mother as having children, crone as an elder woman. And she thinks that archetype has been lost in the UK, back to what I said at the start. Before retreat, a lot about my mum and why she was the way she was when we were children. She doesn't understand why her mother was cruel to her. And then my relationship with my dad, I always felt like he didn't like me. She has a profound sense that her dad does not like her and has never liked her. I mean, can you imagine what that feels like? On retreat, I was held in somebody's hand as a tiny baby. I wasn't visible. It didn't look like a baby. It just, for me, it was a baby. It was me as a baby. And my mum and dad giving me love. And then 6 months later, I was able to recognize where my mum was coming from. That's one of the things I've been working on since I came back, is my relationship with her. I can show her compassion. You see there's some kind of change. And Jeanne was one of the people who had never drunk. She kept saying to herself, I'll do anything once. I'll do anything once. And she meant ayahuasca. At the end of this, she was saying, I might do it twice. Dane, in his 30s, he's American. He's an ex-Marine and a lost soul. T1, he says, I've lost my meaning in life. I just lost what it's all about, what it's for. Pretty high functioning alcoholism. So linked to Klara there. On retreat, he says, certain things were coming out. I could feel them shifting and getting pulled. Some of them trying to hide and then just getting ripped out of me. And it's through no conscious acts, my own. It's just like throwing up and just roar, like a lion's roar, and just feel something just physically leaving your body and mind. So I'm trying to show maybe synesthesia or something, but there's something there about what Dane was about in the ayahuasca experience was the physicality of his mental problems, and he felt like this was exercising demons, basically. 6 months later, all my life crutches, smoking, drinking, drugs, I've taken all that away. He doesn't drink anymore, doesn't smoke, alcoholic before. You might think that's success. It's not. It's just me bearing it all full load. So now he's given up his crutches. He's exposed to that he's not happy in his life. As a therapist, I'd say that gives him the chance to do something about it. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying this is awful. I'm not necessarily better, but it is a funny sort of progress. Yeah. So all of these fit into. So these are just. This is a deep dive into the findings, but there is a longitudinal. So for Dane, there's a longitudinal PET of from smoking, drinking, and drugs to facing his depression and anxiety more directly via ayahuasca. For all three of them, they all fit within a longitudinal group experiential theme, or a draft group experiential theme, which is ayahuasca helps key relationships and self-development. So that's where I've got to our mid-data analysis, but what I'm thinking to propose so far is ayahuasca helps key relationships and self-development. Hopefully you can see that there's relationships, there's self-development, there's moving from alcoholism, there's how people are using ayahuasca to help themselves. So just in the time that's left, I don't have too much time left, and let's move to questions in a moment, but psychedelics and neuroscience, I mean, you tell me, I shrug of shoulders here, but I know this much. This is a diagram from a 2014 study that I feel I get. And I don't really know what this means. As you see, you know, it's homological scaffolded brain functional networks. What I can see in this is that the colours are. I mean, it has to be simplified for this diagram, but the colours are networks of brain, and the inter-network communication is quite strong. And there's just a few connections between networks. Give someone, in this case, psilocybin, which is a serotonergic psychedelic like ayahuasca, and you get that. So what they've found, very broadly speaking, is that there's a lot of inter-network communication. In metaphorical terms, it's turning the snow globe upside down, right? So people talk about fresh snow on the tracks. That means two things. It means that tracks that you're very familiar with, like going to the whiskey when you're having a bad day, are covered up and you can step away from them. In fact, the Ayahuasca Foundation is founded by an ex-heroin addict for exactly that reason. And also new tracks can be made. So if you want to start new habits, you have a chance. You have what some describe as a period of neuroplasticity after the Ayahuasca experience, where you can put in new habits and decide how you want to remap, reconnect your networks. But hopefully you can also see from this, it's quite overwhelming. The whole thing's quite overwhelming, as I've tried to describe. It's mad. It's wild. It may connect to some concepts for neuroscience. My question here is how experiential research and neuroscientific research can be closer colleagues, particularly here at Birkbeck. Synesthesia is kind of, so I've got here, cross-modal sensory experience. Time can slow down, fast forward, stop entirely. Altered sense of body and space I've talked about, but you could have an out-of-body experience. You could have an out-of-species experience. You know, I become a jaguar, Dane became a panther, someone else became a snake, a bird. You may have out-of-dimension experiences. So I'm trying to move beyond even out-of-body experiences, out-of-dimension experiences where, and that's being operated on by 20-foot-high aliens. There's ego death as, I've taken the quote out actually from Laurie, but the ego death is, so in that slide, Robin Carhart-Harris here, who was at Imperial, he talks about the default mode network and psychedelics disruption of that. Ego dissolution, ego death is again a common thing where you lose your sense of self and world, and so what is it you're experiencing? Good question. And then overall a sense of neuroplasticity, turning the snow globe upside down. So in my opinion, there's a prospect here where Birkbeck has two strong functions: MERLiN on the neuroscience side, IPA research group on the experiential side, and there's perhaps there's just today I've titled the talk beginning a dialogue, and I hope to do that with you as individuals and as groups to start thinking about how we could work together and share. You know, learning IPA is an apprenticeship. It's taking many years for me to learn how to interview, how to construct interview schedules, how to get good data. I've no doubt that what you're doing takes a long time to master. I'm not suggesting that we each start doing the other person's thing by doing a webinar and then going off. But I wonder how those levels of expertise can be in dialogue with each other. Those are my contact details. For the record, feel free to talk to me afterwards. And just an offering before we move to questions, in terms of three things I wanted to send your way. One is on Neuroscience, who I'm associated with. They are doing epigenetic neuroimaging, physiological and psychological measures of ayahuasca. So if you're interested in that, They have papers, they have studies. They take electrode-filled hairnets to the Ayahuasca Foundation and study people that are taking Ayahuasca. Second, here's a very recent study. This is on preprint. Complex, slow wave, radically.